I was warned about this many times, but I didn't listen. And even when I saw it with my own eyes, I refused to believe it. Now I regret it every minute that I didn't notice it earlier. But I made a decision that ultimately changed everything dramatically at the end, even though it was very difficult for me. The sun was halfway down when I turned the key and stepped back into the house, bags still swinging from my fingers. That kind of calm you carry after a slow afternoon at the store. Nothing felt out of place until I passed the laundry room. The hum of the washing machine wasn't unusual, but the scent was. A wave of cologne drifted out when I cracked the door. Not mine. Not anything I'd ever worn. Not even close. I squinted through the glass and saw it. A dark blue t-shirt, crumpled and turning in the rinse cycle. The tag stuck out like a sore thumb. Size M, I wear L. But I remembered buying it. The brand, the exact shade. Hell, I remembered holding it up to my chest in the store mirror and thinking it looked sharp. I'd never worn it once. I didn't touch it. Didn't even shut the door. Just walked away with my jaw tight, leaving the groceries to thaw on the counter. That smell stuck in my head like a bad echo. Clean, cold, expensive. A man's cologne, pressed into fabric that had no business being washed here. Later that night, Lena acted like nothing was different. She made dinner, kissed me on the cheek, talked about some conference next week in vague detail. I just nodded, played along, even helped her clean up. But when she went upstairs for a shower, I moved quickly. Her laptop was on the kitchen table, still glowing. I opened it like I'd done a dozen times before. No password. She never bothered. My fingers hovered over the mouse. No social media. That stuff was scrubbed. But her inbox was wide open, and what I found hit harder than I expected. An email receipt, pizza delivery. Nothing strange at first glance, except the address. Not ours, not even our zip code. She'd had food delivered to a neighborhood we didn't know anyone in. No event, no meeting, no reason. It was timed around last Friday, the night she said she was meeting her sister for dinner and a much-needed girls' night. I copied the address into my phone. Didn't say a word when she came back down in her robe, smiling, casual. I kissed her like always, but my mind was already somewhere else, standing across the street from that address, waiting for the next lie to walk out the door. The next morning I said I had errands to run, that I'd be back late. Instead, I drove to a rental shop and picked up a scooter. Something quiet, something forgettable. Traffic took me across the city in less than an hour. When I got there, I parked half a block down and walked the rest of the way. Found a cafe across the street and ordered the weakest coffee they had. Didn't even drink it, just sat there watching. She came into view around 3:40, dressed like she wasn't expecting anyone to notice. Big sunglasses, hair tucked into a hoodie, hands in her coat pockets. But it was her. Same walk. Same purse I bought her last Christmas. She looked both ways and crossed the street fast, unlocking the building door like she'd done it 1,000 times. No hesitation. She was inside within 10 seconds. I didn't follow. I just sat, watching the windows, wondering what kind of man was waiting for her behind one of them. Around 4, a window on the 3rd floor creaked open. The hands that pushed it up were broad, muscular, no shirt, gold watch. He lit a cigarette and leaned out for air. I wrote down the address in my notebook. Slowly, methodically, not shaking, not yet. I closed the cover and walked back to the scooter like it was just another errand. No confrontation, not yet. I didn't want a scene. I wanted to control the pace, and the best way to kill a lie is to starve it over time. She didn't notice anything that night. Said something about getting new conditioner and asked me to smell her hair. I leaned in. It was strong, floral, and underneath it, just barely, that same fucking cologne. There was no doubt now. I wasn't wrong. I wasn't being paranoid. I just needed time, a plan, and now I had both. The next night I was already waiting before she even left the house. Parked 2 streets down in the dark, windows cracked, engine off, just me and the city breathing around each other. I watched Lena pull out of the driveway through the rearview mirror. Same coat, same purse. I waited until her taillights disappeared, then drove straight back to that apartment. This time I didn't sit in the cafe. I circled once, then found the service gate around the side of the building. It was half open, probably meant for delivery trucks, but tonight it was for me. The yard beyond was tight and mostly gravel, patches of dirt between sagging bushes and forgotten furniture. I walked slow, placing my feet where she had the night before. Her shoes had left small, clean ovals in the gravel, soft enough to catch a trace of tread. Not the boots she wore to work. Something lighter. Flats, maybe. I stopped under the same window where I'd seen the man before, the one with the gold watch and no shame. My hands didn't shake as I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small vial. The label had long worn off, but I knew exactly what was in it. Fish blood, sprayed with brine, thick and clinging. I'd picked it up from a bait shop off the docks, used for shark lines, but tonight it had a different use. I popped the cap and poured it low, just over the doorstep, letting it soak into the crevices between the concrete. A little on the gravel, too. The smell was instant. Sour, metallic, ocean deep. Then I left. Quiet. Unseen. By noon the next day, I walked into the garage to grab a tool. And there she was, kneeling by the sink, scrubbing a pair of shoes like they'd come back from a war zone. Burgundy leather flats, speckled dark, like she'd stepped through something sticky. "Spilled wine," she said when she noticed me watching. Her voice was flat, too fast. I raised an eyebrow and leaned against the doorframe. "Red? With a hint of bay water?" She blinked. That tiny moment, 1 second too long, was enough. "Must have been something in the street," she said finally, brushing past me, wet shoes dangling from one hand. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. I went back into the house, grabbed my phone from the drawer, and opened the app I'd set up days ago. Just a simple voice recorder, timed and labeled. One clip stood out, recorded last night around 9:17 p.m. when I was parked outside her little secret. I hit play. Her voice came through clearly, wind in the background, heels on pavement. Laughter barely held in check. "Just don't come over. He suspects nothing." My thumb froze on the pause button. I'd replayed it 3 times, letting the syllables etch into memory. That wasn't guilt in her tone. That was arrogance. I forwarded the clip to my backup cloud folder, renamed it Phase 1, and sat at the table with a glass of water I didn't drink. It was time to start pushing back, but not with yelling or drama. That's not what she feared. What she feared was silence, control, the kind she couldn't read. The next day I left early, said I had client meetings in another city and wouldn't be back until the weekend. She smiled like it was a gift. I could see it in her eyes. The way she blinked a little slower, the way her shoulders loosened as I packed. She thought she had space again, a wide open field where she could keep lying and laughing and making plans with someone who wasn't me. Let her. When I drove off, I didn't head to the city. I didn't even leave the area. Instead, I doubled back around 2 hours later and parked in the neighborhood behind our house, cutting through the wooded path that ended near the rear fence. No one saw me enter. No one needed to. I waited until evening, crouched behind the shed, watching through the narrow break between the slats. She was on the phone again. Same coat, same purse dropped carelessly on the counter. The call didn't last long, and she didn't use names. But the tone, it was enough. Relaxed, flirtatious, safe. She had no idea how unsafe she was. By the time night fell, I was back in the garage. Lights low, music off, just me and the sound of keys clicking against aluminum. An old typewriter I'd picked up at a flea market 2 weeks before. Just in case. She'd always liked antiques, always said they felt realer than digital. So I let her have her illusions. She'd typed something on it recently, left faint imprints on the ribbon and smudges on the platen. The next part of the plan wasn't rage, it was replication. I had what I needed. The address, the key, the schedule. Now I wanted to know how deep the rot went. And when I found it, when I saw how far she'd already planned to cut loose, it wasn't grief that hit me. It was clarity. There was no coming back for her. But I wasn't done yet. I waited until the house was asleep. Not just quiet, dead silent. the kind of stillness that makes your ears ring from the absence of sound. I slid the bedroom door open and let Lena sleep through the lie. She'd told me she'd had a long day, some vague story about helping her friend's mother with paperwork. I'd nodded, kissed her forehead, and tucked her in like the fiction she was. Then I went downstairs and unlocked the wardrobe in the guest room. It hadn't been touched in months, not since we stored some old linens and winter coats in there. But now, tucked deep under the false bottom I'd installed years ago, was the box. Heron I'd found it the night before, after pretending to go on that trip. While she thought she had an empty house, I was under the floorboards with gloves on, cataloging everything she tried to hide. Inside were papers folded neatly in plastic sleeves, some typed, some handwritten, all marked with a subtle kind of paranoia. Private Plan B was scrawled on the front page of one. It read like an escape manual. Alternate identity documents, bank accounts under initials, hotel reservations, cash withdrawal logs, backup addresses, even the mention of tickets 10:15 p.m. with no destination named. Just the time, as if it was already decided where she'd go and who she'd go with. I didn't take anything. I just scanned and retyped it all using the same keys she had. Her beloved antique typewriter, the one she insisted gave her creative inspiration. I matched every header, every tab space, the same ink ribbon, the same errors. And then I waited for the perfect day. That morning was bright and fake. One of those days that looks peaceful just to make you let your guard down. I invited her on a picnic, something she'd been hinting at for weeks. She smiled like we were fixing something, like this was the start of some healing chapter she didn't deserve. I played along, made sandwiches, packed wine, even threw in the good blanket we got on our 5th anniversary. She sat in the passenger seat humming to the radio like a girl in a different life. We drove an hour out. No service, no neighbors, just hills and wind and too much sun. When we unpacked the basket, I let her pour the wine. Her fingers shook a little, probably from guilt or nerves. Or maybe she thought I was about to tell her I'd forgiven everything, that we could start over. Instead, I reached into my coat and pulled out the envelope. I didn't say a word, just slid it across the blanket toward her, slow and steady, watching her face as she opened it. The first page was a perfect copy of her plan. Every word, every numbered account, every lie typed in her own style. She knew what it was before she read it. Her breath caught halfway down the page, and when she looked up, her lips parted like she wanted to speak but couldn't find a single word that wouldn't implode. "It's beautiful," I said, folding my arms, "but it won't work." She didn't ask how I found it. That silence said everything. She knew the box was hidden well. Too well. If I had it, then I'd already seen everything else. There was no pretending, no room to spin some fragile excuse about planning just in case. This wasn't a backup. It was a departure plan. She started to cry, but it wasn't grief. It was frustration. She hated that I was calm, that I wasn't yelling or throwing things or making this easy by exploding. I just sat there, watching the gears collapse behind her eyes, watching her realize she didn't know what game we were playing anymore. She asked if I was going to leave her. I smiled, not cruelly, not coldly, but with something worse, indifference. "Not yet," I said, and poured my own glass of wine. We stayed there for another hour. She barely spoke, just picked at the food like her appetite had dissolved. I kept the envelope by my side the entire time, never offering it back, never mentioning what else I might have seen. I didn't need to. I could see the panic setting in like a fever. Slow at first, then clawing. By the time we drove back, she was a shadow. The road curved in silence, mile after mile of nothing but the sound of tires and the occasional breath she took when she thought I wasn't listening. She didn't even reach for my hand when we hit traffic, just stared out the window, gripping the door like it might open a way out of this mess she built. That night she tried to pretend. Wore the silk robe I bought her last Christmas. Lit candles like we were some romantic movie she could still script. I let her go through the motions. Let her think maybe the picnic was just a warning shot, that she could pull this back together. She didn't see me lock the guest room before bed. She didn't notice the cameras I'd begun installing in the corners of the house. Tiny things, voice activated, buried behind decorations and lights. She wouldn't know until it was far too late, because now I had more than evidence. I had her timeline. I had the names she whispered on the phone. I had the tone she used when she thought I wasn't listening. She wasn't sorry. She was just exposed. And exposure, real, public, devastating exposure, was next. Sunday morning came with a sky so clear it felt staged. Lena sat at the table scrolling through her phone, sipping her usual green tea, wearing the pink cardigan she thought made her look softer. I stood by the sink, rinsing out a mug and nodding as she rambled on about needing to pick up a few things from the summer house. Some gardening tools, a couple of blankets, maybe the wine cooler. She offered to go alone, even smiled when she said it. I let her think it was her idea. I handed her the keys and kissed her on the forehead, as if I hadn't spent the night mapping every inch of our home like an enemy fortress. As soon as the driveway was empty, I moved. The door locks came first. I pulled the battery from the digital front panel and reset the system entirely. No app access for her anymore. Then I changed the Wi-Fi password, wiped every remembered device but my own, and rerouted the router through a dummy VPN server. She'd get no signal, no updates, no control. Next came the cameras. I'd installed them over the last few days in silence. Behind vent grills, tucked under shelves, inside hollowed-out smart speakers. Each one voice-activated, motion-tracked, synced to my phone. I flipped the master switch from my laptop, and for the first time, I could see the house from every angle, every vulnerable seam. She had no idea she'd been walking through a stage this entire time. Then came the final touch, the yard projector. I set it up just behind the shed, camouflaged beneath a tarp, and wired into the outdoor speaker system. The projector was small but powerful, loaded with edited clips, grainy but sharp enough to see who was who. Lena mostly, laughing, entering that apartment. Leaning into someone who was very much not me, his shirtless torso caught in the window frame, her voice recorded from the sidewalk. He suspects nothing. Her giggle right after. That stuck with me. That wasn't the sound of guilt. That was celebration. By the time she returned, the house was sealed tight. I watched from the shadows of the side gate as she got out of the car, her smile faltering the second the front door didn't respond to her key. She tapped the keypad, pressed the handle, then again. Harder. Still nothing. Then the voice system kicked in. "This is the last night in this house," I said through the outdoor speaker. "Not yours? Ours." She froze. Her head snapped up, trying to find the source. Her voice cracked when she said my name. Almost demanding, almost begging. I didn't respond. The lights inside the house flickered on, one by one, then off, then on again. The living room, the kitchen, the bedroom. As if the house itself had become aware of her. Then the projector buzzed to life. The wall of the garage lit up with shaky footage. Her walking up to that apartment. Her kissing the man in the hallway. Her sitting on a stranger's couch, barefoot with wine in hand. Another clip. Her laughing on the phone, voice barely hushed. "Just keep the door open. He thinks I'm with my sister." Her image flickered across the yard in full color, larger than life, surrounded by her own deceit. She screamed, not words, just noise, raw panic. She threw something at the house. I think it was her bag, but it bounced off the door frame and hit the step. She pounded on the glass like it might forgive her. But I didn't come to the door. I didn't speak again. I just watched from the monitors as she crumbled in the yard, fists red from striking the lock panels, voice breaking in the wind. By morning, the projector had gone dark, the speakers silent, the lights steady. But by the front gate, lined up neatly, were 6 black bags, all hers. Every article of clothing, every book, every photo frame that had her smile in it, her name tags, her jewelry boxes, her untouched art supplies. A slow purge packed with the kind of precision that says nothing was spared. She didn't ring the bell again. She just stood there staring at the bags, one hand over her mouth like she couldn't decide whether to cry or vomit. Then she dropped to her knees and started opening them, one after another, like she didn't trust what was inside. Like part of her still hoped I hadn't meant it. But I did. Every box was a boundary. Every bag was a severed limb of a life she tried to rewrite without me. She stayed in the driveway for hours. Neighbors peeked out windows. No one came to help. I didn't stop her. Didn't go outside. Just sat in the dark, phone in hand, watching the woman I used to love sort through the remains of her double life like a thief forced to inventory her own guilt. And when she finally drove away, alone, broken, with the bags tossed into her trunk like trash, I didn't feel relief, just readiness, because it wasn't over yet. The public still saw her one way. That was about to change. 2 days passed. No calls, no messages, just silence on her end. The kind you only hear when someone's trying to decide whether to beg or disappear. I didn't push. I didn't need to. The silence told me she wasn't sleeping, that she was waiting for the next hit. And it came, just not the way she expected. Her lover owned a beauty salon. Sleek, polished, all glass and white tile, like it belonged on some influencer's curated feed. I'd driven past it 3 times before I walked in. No cameras out front, just a discreet receptionist who looked too busy to notice I didn't belong. I signed in under a fake name, booked the most expensive skincare treatment, and followed the girl to the changing room with the same practiced smile I'd used on Lena when I pretended not to know. In the corner locker, I left a sealed envelope. Inside were the photos, hidden camera angles, her and him inside the apartment, her walking out at dawn, him shirtless by the window. I'd captioned one, "Private guest services or unlicensed operation." Another, "Is this part of the premium package?" Beneath the photos, a single line, "Unlicensed service. Regulation violation. For review." Signed with the initials of a local compliance agent. Completely fake, but styled well enough to cause a panic if someone even glanced at it. I walked out without saying a word, and by nightfall the place was dark, closed, a paper sign taped to the glass, temporarily suspended for inspection. The comments on their last Instagram post had already started shifting. Heard something happened. Why'd they get shut down? And I hadn't even posted anything myself yet. That evening, Lena called. 3 times. I watched the screen light up in my hand while I sat on the back porch, rain tapping against the railing. I didn't answer. She texted next. "Did you do something to Roman's business?" No question mark. That struck me. It wasn't a question. She knew. The next morning I started phase 2. I opened our shared photo archive, the one we used to show off vacations, birthdays, little things. I uploaded 4 new images. Her walking into the affair apartment, cropped and clear, her name tagged, Romans too. I sent the album link to everyone in our circle, friends, co-workers, even her yoga instructor. Captioned simply, "Their idea of family values." The response was nuclear. One friend from our hiking group replied with "WTF" and nothing else. Another texted, "Tell me this isn't real." I didn't answer. Just let the images speak for themselves. I posted nothing on my own pages. I wanted no credit, no spotlight, just the fallout. By noon, Lena's name had been removed from 3 group chats we both belonged to. By evening, one of her co-workers messaged me privately saying, "I always wondered why she was acting so strange last quarter." I didn't respond. People don't want scandal, but they feed off it the moment it spills. And Lena? She'd fed them lies for so long that the truth hit like acid in the throat. That night, I passed by her temporary apartment, the one she'd scrambled to rent after I locked her out. Lights were on. She was sitting by the window, head down, phone glowing. No one else there. No second car parked outside. Alone. I took a picture from the street, sent it to my backup drive. Not for proof, just to mark the date. The night the silence finally turned on her. The next day, her sister called me, asked if we could talk. "She's falling apart," she said. "She says you're doing something, that you're—" "I'm reminding her who I am," I said flatly. A pause. "She thought you wouldn't fight back." She was right, until she made me stop being a husband. Her sister hung up not long after that. No follow-up, no apology. I didn't care. The truth was, this wasn't about pain anymore. It wasn't about making her feel what I felt. It was about destruction, methodical, quiet, permanent. Piece by piece, I was pulling the structure of her life apart, not with noise, but with exposure, with truth. Because once people saw her without the mask, there was no putting it back on. And this wasn't over. She still had things hidden, still had leverage, still had plans. But I'd been listening, always. And soon her own voice would finish what I'd started. It was always going to come down to money. The mask might have cracked, the lies burned through, but people like Lena, they don't start over. They survive. And survival for her meant one thing: our joint accounts, the ones I had built, the ones she had access to, the ones she thought I wasn't watching, but I was. I had been for weeks. I installed the sensor under the kitchen light just above the spice rack. Took 2 hours to set up. Voice activated, narrow capture, tied to a single trigger word: cash. That was it. Every time she said it, the sensor clipped the audio, tagged it by date, and sent it to a private folder I could access from my phone. For 3 days, nothing. Then it started. If I move the cash first, he can't trace it. Just get the envelope ready before he starts asking questions. I'm telling you, it's still half his, but he won't fight for it if I'm fast. It was like listening to a live autopsy of our marriage. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was calculating, talking to someone, probably Roman, about how to move $12,000 into a new account she thought I didn't know about. And she wasn't subtle. She was giving instructions like she ran the operation. That night, she asked me to fix the boiler in the basement. That alone was suspicious. She never asked me for anything these days. I played along, went down, opened the panel. Inside was the envelope, taped to the side with a strip of red masking tape, like she was trying to be clever. $6,000 in cash. I didn't touch it at first, just stared. Then I reached out and pulled it free, slow and deliberate. Felt the weight, clean, fresh bills, wrapped with a blue bank band. I turned as I heard her step behind me. She reached out fast, not saying a word, just going for the envelope like it was reflex. I grabbed her wrist mid-motion, not hard, just enough. I don't need proof, I said, voice steady. I need an ending, and it won't be yours. Her face shifted like she'd been hit. She froze, her lips parted, probably trying to form a question. Maybe something like, "What does that mean?" But she didn't get a word out. She pulled her arm free and ran. I didn't stop her, didn't follow. I let the front door slam behind her and waited until I heard the engine in her car grind and fade into the night. Then I went upstairs and opened my list, the one I'd been building since the day I found the shirt in the washer. Names, dates, amounts. Every person she'd transferred money to, friends, siblings, ghost names and payment apps. I began calling them one by one. I didn't explain. I just asked questions, asked where the money went, asked if they knew what it was for. Most denied. Some hung up, but one cracked after 15 seconds. Some guy named Mitchell. Claimed he thought it was a loan. Claimed she told him it was for her independent restart, whatever that meant. I recorded every call, tagged them, sent the audio files to her lawyer, marked the emails as read. Then I contacted the bank, requested a freeze on all joint withdrawals, removed her authorization from every secondary account, filed a fraud report on the envelope in the boiler. Everything done legally, quietly, all with her name still on the statements, still recorded in her voice. By the time the next morning hit, she was locked out of her own exit plan. Cards declined, apps flagged, her backup accounts tied up in pending investigations she'd never be able to explain without admitting everything. And I hadn't even touched the divorce papers yet. I heard her before I saw her. Footsteps slamming up the porch, a fist pounding on the door. I didn't open it, just activated the speaker. "You should have been smarter," I said. "You thought money would save you." She didn't scream this time, didn't cry, just stood there, her breath ragged in the cold. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't think you'd do this." I wanted to tell her the truth, that she never knew who I was, that what I'd done wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was survival. She took what we had and carved pieces out of it until nothing fit anymore. And now that her escape was collapsing, she realized what it meant to be on the other side of exposure. But I didn't say any of it. Instead, I walked into the den, grabbed my notebook, and wrote down a single word next to the final box on the list. Complete. Then I began the last phase, the one where everything she'd touched would be returned to her, but not in the way she expected. It took a full day to gather everything. I started with the jewelry. Not the cheap stuff, the real pieces. The ones I saved months to buy, the ones she wore to parties and smiled in when people asked about our marriage. I laid each one out on the kitchen table, labeled them with sticky notes. Date, location, the memory she buried under a lie. Her gold watch from the Aspen trip, first night she lied. The bracelet from our 10th anniversary dinner. Said she was working late. Each one was an artifact of betrayal, boxed with precision like items in a museum of silence. Next came the electronics, her tablets, laptops, backup phones. I wiped them all clean, left only one folder on the desktop titled Truth. Inside were photos, audio, bank records, voice files with her name, her words, her plans. Nothing edited, nothing dramatic, just the cold trail of decisions she thought she could bury. Then the photos. Our life was stacked in albums. Birthdays, vacations, blurry selfies, and restaurants we'd since forgotten. I picked the ones where we were smiling the hardest. I placed them in a leather case, one of those fake antique ones she always loved. Then I walked into the garage, flipped the lighter open, and burned them. Not all at once, one by one. Each picture curled in the flame, colors blistering to ash. I watched them go without blinking. I wasn't mourning. I was erasing the illusion. This wasn't grief anymore. This was clarity. I wasn't killing the past. I was severing it. And what was left in the smoke wasn't sadness. It was air. Breathable, real air for the first time in months. She arrived that night. I told her to meet me in the old storage unit, the one we never used anymore, the one still under both our names. I texted her the code and the time. No explanation, just one sentence. Come collect what's left. When she stepped inside, she froze. The room was silent but full. 3 boxes lined against the wall. Jewelry, electronics, photos, each labeled, each sealed. A sign above them, return to sender. In the center of the floor, under a single hanging light bulb, stood a 4th box, heavier, wrapped in canvas. I waited until she stepped closer before opening it. Inside were all the notes I'd saved, her plans, her alternate identities, the fake documents, even the cash that hadn't already been frozen. And on top, a copy of the typewritten letter she once thought I'd never see. She opened her mouth to speak. I didn't let her. I put on the gloves, the thick black ones I wore when I rebuilt my car engine years ago, and picked up the last case, the one with our wedding photo on top, framed in silver. I opened it slow. Inside were only photos. Our wedding, her family, mine, the day she moved in, the first time we brought home our dog. I struck a match. She screamed and lunged, but I didn't flinch. I dropped the flame into the box and stepped back. The fire didn't roar. It whispered, quiet, deliberate, patient, like it understood the moment. She fell to her knees as the heat rose and the photo glass cracked. Her hands shook, but she didn't reach for me. She knew. The line had already been drawn. There was no confession that would save her, no plea that would rewind the days I spent peeling her lies back one layer at a time. She tried to speak. I turned away. This isn't jealousy, I said, loud enough to cut through the crackle. This is closure. And I walked out, past her, past the flames, past the past. The night air hit like a blade, sharp and cold and perfect. I didn't look back, didn't check if she followed. I knew she wouldn't. I got in the car and drove. No destination, just forward, just away. As the road stretched out under my wheels, I didn't feel rage or sadness or even relief. I felt freedom, and it was the first thing she hadn't touched. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe Hit the like button and comment below what you think about all this and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.